We turn now to a flurry of new developments in the sweeping Fulton County investigation. The former president, Donald Trump, now waiving his scheduled arraignment that was set for next week, entering a plea of not guilty. That plea was filed in writing. You can see Trump's signature right there. Hard to miss on the document. All this means he will not be appearing for that scheduled in-person arraignment on Wednesday, the date that he and the 18 co-defendants were scheduled to go before a judge. Neither, by the way, will Kenneth Chesebro. He's also pleaded not guilty, did so this morning, and will be waiving his arraignment appearance as well. Joining me here in Washington is NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian. Tia Mitchell is the Washington correspondent for the AJC, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and former U.S. Attorney from Michigan, Barbara McQuade. We're fortunate to have her with us as well. Ken, I'll get to you because you're closest to me and you're right in person. So what's next in this case? What are you keeping your eyes on and what should we be watching for?
Well, Peter, I think we're seeing the consequences here of the decision by Fani Willis to bring a sprawling 41-count racketeering indictment against 19 separate defendants, because each one of these defendants gets a crack at making motions to this rookie judge. Some of these motions utterly conflict. Some of them want to go to trial early. Donald Trump obviously wants to delay as long as possible. And so there are some complexities here. If in fact some of these defendants get their wish and they go to trial this fall or earlier next year, that will give Donald Trump and his lawyers a free crack at all the evidence in this case.
So let me ask you about this, Barbara, if I can, for a second. How many of these other co-defendants do you expect we will see follow suit like we've seen from former President Trump? I mean, you recognize if they try to sever their cases from the others, that would force, were it to happen, you to have witnesses who had to testify on multiple occasions about basically the same facts.
Yeah, so in a case like this with multiple defendants, there are a lot of tensions here. One is efficiency. A judge doesn't want to have to try this case again and again and again. On the other hand, when you've got multiple defendants in the courtroom, the risk is that the jury has a hard time keeping track of which evidence applies to which defendant. And for that reason, sometimes judges do want to sever. I think what you're seeing play out is the different strategy choices made by Fani Willis to go comprehensive and big, and Jack Smith to go very narrowly focused and charging only Donald Trump, to avoid some of these skirmishes that will complicate and delay the case.
So if we focus on the Georgia case, Barbara, is this a smart play, do you think, by these defendants to try to sever theirs?
I think so. I mean, it depends on your strategy. I have seen sometimes lower-level defendants want to distance themselves from people higher up in the organization because they don't want to be tainted by the spillover effect of evidence against them. On the other hand, sometimes I've seen the lowest-level defendant want to go to trial with the kingpin of the organization because the contrast of the behavior of the two is so stark. And sometimes a jury might say, well, I see this mountain of evidence against defendant 1. I see less evidence against defendant 19. Therefore, this must be guilt beyond a reasonable doubt for defendant 1, but it seems like something less for defendant 19. So each defendant is going to have to figure out for him or herself what's the best strategy for them in this case.
So I just want to focus on this, Tia. I promise I'm getting to you in a moment with some new reporting that we also know about. But what does this tell you about the attorneys for Ray Smith, Ken, right now, asking the judge to sever the co-defendants into, quote, manageable groups for trial?
A lot of people think that's a reasonable request, and his attorneys are pointing to another racketeering case that's ongoing in Fulton County against some rappers. It's taken 8 months in that case to pick a jury, and Ray Smith's lawyers are saying that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Let's split this thing up into manageable quadrants, and that may well happen, Peter.
All right, Tia, let me get to you then, if I can. We're also keeping a close eye on, I think it's September 8th. That's for the possible release of the final report to the special grand jury that investigated interference with the 2020 presidential election. This, importantly, is different from the grand jury that voted to indict Trump and those 18 others. So what might we learn from this report?
Well, there's a lot we might learn because the special grand jury is who initially heard evidence, spoke to witnesses. They had this report that recommended who should face charges. The regular grand jury that ultimately decided who to indict had the report, but again, that full report has not been made public. What we'll be able to see when we receive this report is who the special grand jury recommended and how that compares to who was actually indicted. For example, did they indict people that weren't named by the grand jury, Or were there people who were named by the special grand jury who maybe weren't indicted but are now some of those unnamed, unindicted co-conspirators?
So, Barbara, let me ask you if I can. Let's take a step back here and anticipate the way all of this plays out. I mean, this would be the trial of the century, to say, of perhaps the last several centuries. We have learned that this case is likely to be televised. How do you feel about Judge McAfee allowing the case to be live streamed, which would allow the public to watch in real time?
I think in this day and age, when there's so much disinformation about what's occurring in the cases against Donald Trump, that for the public to be able to see this case unfold before their very eyes is very important. Otherwise, it allows people to use spin and take advantage of the information vacuum and say, these witnesses were lying or these witnesses were not credible, and just pull out and cherry pick little pieces of it. When the public can see the entire trial for themselves, then I think it promotes public trust. I'll use as an example the trial of Derek Chauvin in the killing of George Floyd. I think it was useful for the government to show that case to the public because everyone was able to see for themselves what the evidence was. Otherwise, I think there could have been narratives on either side of that case that were less than accurate. Instead, the public got to decide for themselves. In the same way, it's very important in this case that the public see for themselves the evidence that comes out in this case.
I remember covering former President Trump, and he would routinely attack reporters like myself and others, saying that these sources were anonymous, that no one ever said such a thing. They had literally been on camera in the briefing room like 24 hours earlier. We would show that very fact to his aides and allies who would push back. Tia, let me ask you, yesterday, the Georgia governor, Brian Kemp, he had some pretty striking words, tough words for members of his own party who were discussing these ways to go after the Fulton County District Attorney, Fani Willis. What do you make of that? What do you think of that? What's the reaction?
So I think what Governor Kemp is trying to do is learning the lessons of 2020 and how misinformation and disinformation was used to get people emotionally invested in untruths about the election. It led to the riot at the Capitol on January 6th. And I think he's just trying to be proactive to make sure that in a similar way, conservatives, Trump allies, are not whipped up into a frenzy in Georgia. There's a state senator who's been trying to do just that. And Governor Kemp is saying what this state senator is saying is not accurate. It's not going to happen. And just kind of nip it in the bud, I think. He's also standing up to former President Trump, who continues to say he won the election in Georgia, continues to say that this prosecution is politically motivated. And Governor Kemp is saying, let the process play out. Let's let the legal system do its work.
Yeah, it may explain why Governor Kemp was able to win re-election in that state. This is a smart group. We should do this more often. Ken Dilanian, Tia Mitchell, Barbara McQuaid, it's nice to be with all three of you. Thank you very much.